They have polled the 1%. Right, the official 1%. And as Oriandra over at Daily Kos notes, it ain't pretty. It's not pretty. This is absolutely fascinating. First of all, you'll remember back maybe a week or two ago, we had Professor Giles on, and he and a colleague of his had just published a study which found that in the days or in the years since 1976 and 77, in 76, in the Buckley versus Vallejo case, the Supreme Court ruled that money used for politics was not, spending money for political activity was not just a regulatable behavior, that it had dimensions of free speech associated with it. And in this case, it was that rich candidates could bankroll themselves in defiance of campaign limits, campaign spending limits, which opened the doors for rich people to get into politics. That was 76, the Buckley case. 77, First National Bank versus Bellotti, there was a bank in Boston that had been spending money in politics in a way that was against Massachusetts law. There was Massachusetts law that said if banks spent money on politics, it had to have to do with banking. And this didn't. My recollection is it had to do with abortion, or it had to do with a candidate who was an anti-abortion candidate, but whatever. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the bank in that case and said that protection for spending money as free speech extends not just to rich individuals who want to run for office, but also to corporations. These were both cases that were championed by Lewis Powell, who wrote the infamous Powell memo in '71 and then was put in the Supreme Court 3 months later by Richard Nixon. And it established it set up Citizens United and the McCutcheon case. And so now we've got a situation, as Giles pointed out on this program a week or two ago, where if you're in the top 10% of Americans, and the top 10%, to be in the top 10%, you make over basically about $130,000. To be the top 1%, you make over about $300,000, $320,000, I think it is. But if you're in that, relatively rarefied territory, the probability of what you want to happen politically and Congress doing it is fairly high, 70, 80, 90%, depending on what it is. But if you're in the 50%, the 50th percentile, if you're the average American wage earner, $44,000 per family, $25,000 per person, if that's you, the probability of you getting what you want politically, politicians doing what you think is a good thing, is the same as a coin toss. It's the same. It's not even the same as a coin toss, because that's 50-50. It's the same as darts being thrown at a dartboard and maybe not even hitting the. It's the same as noise. It's statistically the same as what's referred to in statistics as noise. In other words, it's not statistically significant. In other words, average working people in America have no say in what's going on politically. And if you're the poor, same thing. Now, average working people used to think this was merely the problem of the poor. But they've figured out now over the last couple of decades, particularly since this decision in the 70s, and then Reagan, building basically into Reaganomics, saying, okay, cool, rich people can now call the tune for politics. We're with the rich people. I mean, this is the essence of Reaganomics. It's a political economic system for the top 10%, the top 1%, the top 100th of 1%. So finally somebody said, well, what do the 1% actually think? Here's the results. It's amazing. The percentage of elites who are in favor of or opposed to environmental protection is a -8%. -8%. In other words, the number of elites who want to cut environmental protection outnumbers the number of elites who want it, to the point that it's a -8%. That's the top 1%. In other words, 8% in net, 8% of the top 1% want us to cut environmental protections. Whereas the general public, the 50%, the average working people, actually the bottom 80% is what they were looking at. 29% are in favor of expanding environmental protections. How about health care? Providing health care for all Americans. Among the top 1%, a negative 19%. They want to cut health care for working and poor people. Among the average person, it's a plus 44%. For Social Security, it's a negative 33%. Among average people, that's for the top 1%. Among average people, it's plus 46%. Here's some statements that were made. Government should see that no one is without food, clothing, or shelter. The general public, 68% of the public agrees with that. I'm telling you, America is a center-left nation. But among the top 1%, only 43% agree with that. I'm shocked it's that high, frankly. Statement, minimum wage should be high enough so that no family with a full-time worker falls below poverty, below the official poverty line. 78% of Americans agree with that statement. The average working people are the bottom 80%. Of the top 1%, only 40% agree with that statement. The government should provide a decent standard of living for the unemployed. Half of Americans agree with that. We are a center-left nation. Only 23% of the 1% agree with that. The federal government should provide jobs for everyone willing to work who can't find a job in the private sector. 53% of Americans, the majority of Americans, agree with that. 8% of the 1%. It's really quite remarkable. And pretty ugly.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
So the net here is that your interests and the interests of most other Americans are not shared by the members of Congress or the top 1%.